welcome back to the 12 Days of ChrisBondmas, and today we're looking at one of my personal favorite movie-based games, The Emperor's New Groove. Released alongside the film back in 2000, The Emperor's New Groove is a platforming puzzle game taking you through the plot of the film. Funny enough, I actually remember picking this one up as a kid. My parents and me went to Toys R Us, rest in peace, and I had a choice between this and the Atlantis The Lost Empire tie-in game. And I was torn since I loved both these movies as a kid, but in the end I chose The Emperor's New Groove, since I was kinda hoping it had the kick-ass Tom Jones intro song, so yeah, the things we had to do back in the 90s when we couldn't just YouTube something. Honestly though, I've never regretted my purchase since The Emperor's New Groove, while easy and short, like most movie games, is still a blast to play, and it's a must-play if you're a fan of the film. So if that intro wasn't abundantly apparent, I love The Emperor's New Groove. It's a funny, buddy film with a ton of jokes, creative animated style, and a kick-ass score to boot. This film was one of Disney's first after their 90s run of films that were all musicals, and in a strange twist, The Emperor's New Groove was supposed to be a musical called Kingdom of the Sun, but after a ton of delays and a test screening, that film was turned into, well, what we see here. Honestly, it's a really interesting story, far too much for me to segue into here, but if you're interested, I recommend looking into it. And there's even this documentary, I'm pretty sure I saw it on YouTube the other day, called The Sweatbox. I know that sounds like not what I'm recommending you, but trust me, well, double check and make sure what you type in is that. But The Sweatbox is a documentary explaining what happened to the original film, so it's definitely worth a look. Regardless, the film was a minor success in theaters, but it did find a cult following on video. And I guess it took Disney a long time to even notice that the series had fans, because it took them 5 years to make the cash-in sequel Kronk's New Groove, and then a year later to make the TV show The Emperor's New School, which was following the characters after the film. The film, and to that extent the game, involves a stuck-up and egocentric Emperor Kuzco, played by David Spade, who was about to destroy the local village to make room for his summer home. The leader of that village, Pacha, played by John Goodman, tries to get him to stop, only to be kicked out. Meanwhile, Kuzco's advisor Yzma, played by Etha Kitt, is planning to overthrow Kuzco along with her lovable but dim-witted henchman, Kronk, played by the always awesome Patrick Warburton. Yzma tries to poison Kuzco, but this backfires when she accidentally turns him into a llama. Kronk then takes Kuzco out of the city, and he eventually ends up at Pacha's village. After Kuzco realizes what's happening, he tells Pacha that if he brings him back to the palace, he won't build his summer home on Pacha's village. And Pacha naturally agrees. So the rest of the plot involves the pair making their way back to the palace, with Kuzco learning humility. Though the later sequel and TV show ended up revealing that all this character development went completely out the window, which was, kind of part of the course for those direct-to-DVD films of the era. But that's a whole other issue to discuss in a whole other set of videos. The game's plot follows us remarkably close, though I kinda hope you've seen the movie, or at least the first 20-odd minutes, or maybe read the manual, because the game's first cutscene is this, when Pacha finds Kuzco already turned into a llama. I always thought this was a bit strange, but yeah, there's no intro to explaining anything else that happened before this, so yeah. After that, the game goes through the plot with several additions to bulk out the playtime, and in some cases it's pretty damn creative how they get around doing this. For instance, in the film when Pacha and Kuzco are strapped to the log, they fall into the river and then they hit the shore. And this scene lasts for about, a minute? But the game makes several levels out of this, and there's even a great meta reference about it.
This scene was much shorter in the film.
Actually, the gameplay is littered with meta references about the gameplay and the plot, and it's hilarious. Most of the later sections of the game are creative additions to places seen for maybe a few seconds in the film. Another really creative part is the cart ride down to Yzma's lab. Again, in the movie for a few seconds, but in the game it's a patch of levels where you control the cart, actually. Gameplay-wise, you play as Kuzco as he tries to make his way back to the palace. There are 30 levels, and each one has its own unique style of gameplay, though the main gameplay loop is finding the Kuzco idols to open up doors blocking your path to the exit. The idols are hidden around the level behind platforming challenges or other little mini-activities. Sometimes you have to try to knock this kid off his toy llama bike, or solve a short puzzle, or defeat a boss. Kuzco has a jump, a stomp, a roll, and he can charge ahead like a certain dragon from the PS1. Kuzco also gets the ability to spit grapes in a first-person view, and this is used to hit switches that are out of the way. You also have an ability to pick up pots and blocks, which are used to solve those puzzles, and to make little stepping stones to get up to higher platforms. Each level also has coins to collect, though I think the only reason you would collect a lot of them is to extend the charge meter in which you can dash with, because that resets every level. Once you do that though, collecting the rest of the coins ain't really necessary. The controls work well enough, though I guess the one issue would be the camera, which sometimes doesn't quite line up in the best way. It sometimes feels like it's stuck and you can't move it clear. It's never outright terrible, but it can crop up and cause a slight issue. Levels vary on length. Sometimes they're long and have you searching for multiple idols, and engaging in a ton of little side puzzles, though other times the level just houses one little gimmick and then you move on. For instance, one level just has you running from the jaguars in the jungle, and the cart riding scenes down in the lab is just that and nothing else. There's also levels where you are attached to the log and you have to guide it through the river to avoid obstacles. There's a nice pace though, where after you complete a long level, the game will probably give you a few short ones to break up the pace. I also like this because most movie tie-ins love to repeat the same gameplay loop over and over again with little innovation. There are a few levels where you engage in stealth, because I guess all PS1 games post Metal Gear Solid required this. Also, can I bring up a side note while I'm writing this? Why does like 80% of the games I review have stealth in them? I legit only reviewed one stealth-focused game, Metal Gear, and I only did that a few months ago, yet this comes up so frequently. I don't get it. An early level has you trying to avoid Pacha, and you have to hide behind houses and walls to avoid him. And thankfully there are checkpoints if he catches you. However, in the later stages you get placed into an area where the camera gets into a fixed position, and you have to watch the paths of the guards and go when it's the correct time. There's also another section where you get this weird side view and you have to jump up platforms to avoid the guards. These segments don't come up all that often, but it's a nice change from running around the levels. You also get to play as other animals in certain levels. In a few levels, Kuzco will drink another potion and turn into either a turtle, frog, or rabbit. The turtle is used in races against Kronk, where the goal is just to reach the end. The frog is used in puzzles in which you have to use the hop meter to hit the correct switches to leave a room. Each jump is slightly longer than the last, so you have to time it out correctly. And finally, the rabbit is used in rooms where you need to reach high up at ledges. The animal transformations are interesting, but they don't last exceptionally long, and they're only to be found in like a handful of stages. Seriously, I think I can count them all on one hand. It's a shame because they control well and they bring a different gameplay style to the overall package. I did enjoy this because this was a creative use of a scene from the movie. At the end of the movie, Kuzco tries a bunch of potions to try to get away from Yzma, and he turns into a bunch of different animals as a joke. It's not meant to mean anything, so I like that the developers turned it into a gameplay element. Though maybe that's why there's only a few of these levels, since technically it didn't really happen in the film. Then there are the catacomb levels where you control the cart down to Yzma's lab. The goal here is to maneuver the cart along the track, line it up with the corners to make turns, and use the spring pads to jump over to the next section. These sections will vary on fun based on your reflexes. It's hard to see that much further ahead of you, and sometimes the cart will be going at supersonic speeds, and it's hard to make a last-second adjustment. Also, there are sections where the cart turns around and your controls become inverted, and this can really screw with your brain. The sections only last about a minute or two when you actually get them in one go, but the trial and error aspect will definitely make them last a lot longer. I like these sections because the controls are precise for the most part. You just kind of have to be aware of what's coming up, or die a whole bunch of times and memorize the track. These levels were the bane of my childhood, because when the car spun around and the controls went too, I just couldn't comprehend left from right. I couldn't do it. Seriously, I think I still get like anxiety every time I play a game and controls get inverted. The game only takes a few hours to complete, and unfortunately there really isn't a reason to stick around. Other than the coins, there's nothing to collect and there's no difficulty options. That being said, I definitely played this game like 20 times in my entire life. It's short, but it's enjoyable every once in a while. Seriously, The Emperor's New Groove is like fast food video game. It's not great all the time, but in a short burst every couple of months when you got nothing to play, it's worth it. The game never gets boring or stale because every other level changes it up, so you never feel like you're stuck in the hamster wheel of the same gameplay loop. The presentation is really well done considering that this is a movie tie-in. There are in-game cutscenes, but a majority of the plot is told by FMVs ripped from the film. Though in an odd turn, the music from these FMVs is not the music from the movies during this part. It's kind of weird. The character models are a tad blocky, a little too much so for this late in the PS1 lifecycle, but they're serviceable. The voice cast is great, and while Kit and Warburton were the only ones to voice their respective characters, the stand-in for David Spade and John Goodman are really good. Like, I legit had to double-check the credits again, just to make sure, because their sound-alikes are spot on. The early levels are kind of bare, but as you progress through, the levels always look different, and I swear they get more details as you reach the end. The music is amazing and honestly sounds like deleted tracks from the movie. It really emulates the sound from the movie, and I'm positive that you could overlay tracks from this game over shots of the film, and they would fit beautifully. Overall, I really love this game. It's one of your stronger movie-based tie-ins. And if you love the film and yet you skipped this, you owe it to yourself to give this a shot. And hey, it must have been a fan favorite because they re-released it on the PlayStation Store as a PS1 classic. The game's biggest fault is that it's short and easy, which you could, like I said, say about any movie tie-in, but the fun gameplay and the innovative way the levels change up the formula keeps you engaged. The added plot elements are creative and honestly something I wish more developers would do in other movie tie-ins. The style of the game strongly emulates the style of the film in tone and design, which is an added bonus. While there isn't any reason to stick around after the credits roll, this is the type of game that you might be willing to pick up again when you got nothing else to play and are looking to bask in nostalgia for an afternoon. So come back tomorrow for the final day of the 12 Days of ChrisBondmas. Thanks for watching.